These celebrities risked everything by converting to Rastafari. I uncovered a shocking truth behind a famous politician's secret dreadlock ceremony. One athlete's conversion was so controversial, it almost ended his career. You won't believe which global superstar is number one. Stick around till the end. Hans Zollner was never meant to fit into the mold of polite German society. His voice was coarse, his lyrics unrelenting, his very presence a storm against the state. But somewhere inside the rebellion of folk reggae, he discovered the Rastafari path, not as a costume but as a creed of justice, defiance, and spiritual balance. His dreadlocks became as much a banner as his songs, declaring that Babylon's authority could never chain a man whose soul burned for truth. Just as startling was the rise of Czar Redwood, who walked into the 2007 Miss Jamaica Universe contest with locks flowing and spirit unbent. In a competition built on polished smiles and rigid ideals of beauty, she stood rooted in Rastafari identity and shattered the old order by winning the crown. For the first time, a Rasta woman stood on the global stage of Miss Universe, carrying the pride of an entire movement into the spotlight of Mexico City. Equally unexpected was Nander Tanksos, a New Zealand politician whose dreadlocks brushed against the polished walls of Parliament. In a world of suits and rehearsed rhetoric, he carried Rastafari into legislative chambers, weaving environmental ethics and Afrocentric philosophy into political debate. His presence alone was enough to disrupt the sterile atmosphere of governance, reminding the establishment that spirituality and justice had their place in policy. And across the globe, George Wajakoya, a Kenyan lawyer and politician, shocked his peers by aligning with Rastafari not only as a cultural identity, but as a political weapon, making the sacred herb legalization and African-centered ideology the cornerstones of his radical platform. These men showed that Rastafari could bend even the stiff structures of power. From politics and beauty queens, the narration slides into voices of defiance carved in poetry and song. Benjamin Zephaniah stood at the front lines of Britain's spoken word revolution, his verses laced with fire against racism and oppression. Each performance was a sermon of resistance, proof that Rastafari was not just faith, but weaponry in a cultural war. Long before his passing in 2023, his dreadlocks had already crowned him as Britain's unofficial prophet of the dispossessed. Linton Kwesi Johnson carried the same flame, his dub poetry rippling through London like waves of thunder, marrying reggae rhythm to razor-sharp verse on race identity and the unending fight for justice. And then there was Muta Baruka, barefoot poet Jamaica, who turned radio into a pulpit and poetry into prophecy. His voice pierced the silence, tearing into systems of oppression, while affirming the consciousness of Africa and the righteousness of Rasta. The thread of culture cannot be told without Bongo Herman, whose Naya Bingi drum spoke in tones older than words. From the recording studios of Bob Marley to the silver screen of The Harder They Come, his hands carried the heartbeat of Ethiopia into every rhythm. Ross Daniel Hartman, too, left a stamp on that film, immortalized as Pedro in Jimmy Cliff's Cinematic Rebellion. A reminder that Rasta was not merely preached but lived, etched into art and performance. Che Fu-Ness, the New Zealand musician, carried that same conviction, using reggae and activism to fight for indigenous rights and social justice, proving Rastafari could ignite movements far from Jamaica's shores. And in the world of sport, the faith found unlikely disciples. Ricardo Gardner, Jamaica's midfield maestro, leaned on Rastafari to ground him in humility as global football's pressures mounted. Thabo Mngamani, the South African footballer, turned to Rasta after apartheid, finding in it not only spirituality, but a compass for freedom in a country stumbling toward healing. Tafari Moore, whose very name carried the lineage of Haile Selassie, used football in England as a stage to channel discipline, heritage, and Rasta's call for clarity. Even Alan Skilcole, footballer and close confidant of Bob Marley, wove sport and reggae together, his devotion to Rastafari inseparable from his friendship with the legend. But Rastafari reached beyond the football pitch. Rashid Dwyer, the Jamaican sprinter, thundered down tracks with every stride infused by discipline and ancestral pride. Andrew Light, a Guyanese cricketer, found solace in Rasta's teachings as cancer dimmed his body but ignited his spirit. Rasialuja Bramble, the boxer, walked into the ring with fists of steel and a heart baptized in African pride, later immortalized in Rasta and the ring. Each athlete carried dreadlocks not as fashion, but as covenant, proof that competition and consciousness could live together. The narrative folds back to women whose voices carved space for Rastafari in arenas long closed to them. Kai Davis, once crowned Miss Antigua and Barbuda, chose Rasta as her true inheritance, trading pageantry for cultural resistance, beauty for rootedness and African pride. Ijanya Christian, the Anguillan intellectual and activist, pushed Pan-Africanism and repatriation with fire that could not be contained, her advocacy inseparable from Rasta's mission of unity. Jaunine, daughter of a pastor, cast off the robes of conventional religion to embrace Rastafari as a reclamation of African spirituality and a bold statement of women's empowerment. And Ross Judah Siomeng, the Botswana mystic and teacher, infused prophecy and righteousness into her every breath, living as an embodiment of Africa's redemption message. Music, of course, remained the sacred thread that wove through it all. Wadada Leo Smith bent jazz into a vessel for Rastafari, filling each note with echoes of Africa and whispers of spirituality. Billy Ocean, the Trinidad-born pop star, shocked the world by turning from glittering hits to a quieter, deeper embrace of Rasta's truth, proving that identity mattered more than fame. Barbara Makita Blake Hanna, the Jamaican author and broadcaster, carried her faith into books and airwaves after confronting racism abroad, transforming personal wounds into cultural power. Aster Black, Montego Bay's businessman and producer, built bridges of music and faith, turning Rastafari into both commerce and culture. And Ed Fortune, the U.S. illegal substance activist, took the movement's sacrament into the public square, tying his advocacy directly to Rasta spirituality, daring courts and governments alike to criminalize his faith. In every corner of the globe, voices rose. Sams Kaleja, the Burkinabe activist and radio host, wielded his microphone like a spear, using Rasta as resistance, urging Africans to rise against oppression. Gordon, ultimate warrior Braithwaite, the Guyanese footballer and activist, turned Rastafari into a shield of pride and empowerment. And as the roll call nears its end, the image of Zara Redwood once again lingers, her crown glittering not as decoration, but as rebellion. From poets to politicians, sprinters to singers, beauty queens to mystics, these 30 lives reveal how Rastafari refused to remain confined to Jamaica's hillsides. It spread to parliaments and pageants, stadiums and studios, prisons and pulpits. Each name is a testament that dreadlocks are not fashion, Ital food not diet, Nyabingi drums not mere percussion. They are declarations of freedom, survival, and faith. In the end, Rastafari is not a costume worn by stars, but a fire that reshapes their very being, a covenant carried by the few who dare to live against Babylon's tide. Which of these conversions shocked you most? Which celebrities' embrace of Rastafari do you think carried the greatest weight? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's reason together. And if you want more stories of hidden truths and unexpected journeys, then subscribe right now so you never miss the next revelation of reggae, Rasta, and resistance.